Mike Haskell with Tri-State Superbikes. Today we're here with part 2 of our motorcycle oil analysis. If you haven't seen part 1, click on the link above. Wow, Aaron, thanks for getting back to me. Super excited about our motorcycle oil analysis. What is the results of my R3? I'm dying to find out.
Well, I'd like to remind everyone we had 3 bikes that we were looking at. So you'll have to wait your turn and we'll get to your little bike at the end of this video.
Little bike, that's my favorite bike.
I'm going to walk you through the R6 results right now. Now remember, this bike did come from an unknown history, so it's very interesting to look at. So it'll let us know if the bike was ever actually maintained. Looking at the results, you're going to see across the top row are your elements. Now most people are very interested in these because these are things like your wear metals and your additive metals from the oil. Looking at that top left area, you'll see under wear metals, there's things such as iron, nickel, aluminum. Now any of these, as they start to increase by a vast amount, tell you there's something wrong with the bike. But there are some that can be a little bit deceiving, stuff like, for instance, lead. If you use race fuel, or you use a fuel additive to boost your octane in your gas tank, you'll often see a higher lead number. It doesn't actually mean that your bearings are starting to go. Now for your contaminant metals, something like the silicon, it could be dirt in the engine getting through if you decide not to run an air filter, let's say, or it could be something like a new engine. If your engine only has a few hundred miles on it, you're going to see a lot of that because of the type of grease that they use while building the engine. So it's not something to worry about. You change the oil a few times, you'll see it start to decrease. Your multi-source metals could mean different things. Antimony could be grease or it could be bearings. And your additive metals are all coming from your oil. This is not something really to worry about. Stuff like phosphorus and zinc are put in to be anti-wear metals. So these are good things. You want them in there. If they weren't, the oil wouldn't protect the engine. Now looking at the second row, this is where you get some of your history. You'll see that there's a sample number. It's very important to repeatedly test the engine to see how it changes over time. So you'd have your dates here and it keeps track of stuff like that. Then you'll have your contaminants slightly over to the right. This is where fuel dilution, soot, water, any kind of contaminant within the engine that's not an element would be listed here. And your fluid properties, where they check your viscosity to make sure it's still good, that the engine hasn't been beating up the oil too much. Your acid and base number, acid is caused by combustion, typically sulfur and oil. The base number also is another way of looking at it. They can look at it either way, and that just tells you, is the engine oil still healthy? So if either of those numbers get marked as being out of spec, it means that the oil has broken down a little bit too much and should be changed. Now, one nice thing when they do send these out to you is that the numbers do get highlighted, either a yellow or red, if there is a concern. You don't need to know, is it an acceptable range or not? Looking at this, everything looks pretty healthy. So there is no major concerns with this R6 at this moment.
Wow, Aaron, that is a lot of information to go over. How does an average street guy, track guy, what do we do with all that? How's that going to help me?
Well, in the case of this bike, one thing we do want to keep in mind when we're looking at these results is we don't know the history of the bike. So we don't know when that last oil change was actually done. It could have been done a couple hundred miles before the bike was purchased, so it may be giving abnormally good results. The one thing we can say is there's no bad head gasket, there's no bad bearing, there's not something that's about to catastrophically fail on this engine, so we can start using it. We will want to make sure that the very next oil change, we do take another sample. Because while we have a nice baseline now, we want to see what happens after X amount of miles when we go to change the oil.
So when we dumped that oil, it looked really clean when we bought the bike. The owner did say he changed the oil, so obviously he changed the oil.
Yep.
So you were recommending go ahead and just take it out, do a regular 3,000 mile interval,
Yep,
or 2 track days or whatever we do with that bike. It's going to be a track bike. So what do you recommend as far as you're a street rider doing?
Well, okay, so you brought up tracks, so we'll go into that too. But if you're a street rider, I don't think you have to do it every 3,000 miles, especially if you're riding like an average rider. You're not putting these bikes under excessive stress and strain when you ride them on the street. So you can skip and do it every couple oil changes, and that's not a problem. That'll still give you a very accurate picture of your bike. Now, getting into the track side of things, the track, on the other hand, does put a lot of stress and strain on your bike, as you know.
Really? Why?
So you're constantly revving it out. I mean, you're just basically putting the bike through its paces. and really using the bike as it was meant to be used, which does have more of an effect on the bike, the engine, the oil, everything. So you do want to take a look at that more frequently. You don't want to do that every 3,000 miles because that can definitely be a catastrophic failure within 3,000 miles. So there, on track, you're also changing your oil more frequently. So you do want to send it out in probably, I would say, twice a season.
That's great advice. This is why we wanted to get you here to talk about it because, to be honest with you, my R3, I gotta know. Can I win races next week? Do I need to change the oil? Are we good? Can I get 10 track days out of an oil change?
Well, it's very interesting because the very next sheet I have here is not the R3.
Oh.
We are going to move ahead with the Evolve GT Coach's bike, which is a Gsxr 600.
Oh boy.
So we're going to go ahead and look at the results for the Evolve GT Coach's bike, which is a Gsxr 600. And as you can see on the results, the two major issues that I'm looking at is under the contaminants and the fluid properties, both on that second row. The fuel dilution rate, which they have marked in orange right there, of 2.9%, may be concerning, but it may not. If this bike wasn't properly warmed up, there may still be some fuel because there's always a little bit of fuel in your oil after it sits for a while. So if the bike's properly warmed up and that number is true, then it may be a bit concerning. You'll want to test this bike again and see if that changes. The other issue is the oxidation. Now, the oxidation number will actually cause concern. Oxidation occurs as the engine oil starts to break down, and that's usually caused by heat. So if that engine is running hot, it will cause the oil to oxidize quicker. But it may also be that this type of oil just has a bit higher of an oxidation number as its baseline. So it is very important when you send in your oil analysis that you tell them exactly which product you're using, because then they'll be able to tell, is it an abnormal oxidation amount?
Some great information there, Aaron. Thank you. So the coach needs to change his oil a little bit earlier is what you're saying.
Yep, that's the main takeaway. Just change it a bit sooner and he should be fine.
That just tells me you can lead the horse to the water, but you can't make him drink it. So what about my R3?
All right, it is the time that you've been waiting for. The R3. Now, when we started this, just to give a little bit of background, Mike came to me and said, great, I use the best oil that I can buy. I change it regularly. He basically babies this bike, and he can't wait to find out that he can extend the life of his oil because use the best, take the best care of it, you're going to be fine. Well, I'm here to tell you that you can't. So looking at the results, yeah, I know, shocking.
I've been wiping the bike with a diaper since it's been in this garage, so I've been feeding it with the best of everything. So what do you mean it's not? I need at least another 2 track days or a race.
You're not going to get it, and I definitely would recommend not doing that. So you change the oil extremely frequently on this bike,
yes,
which is why this number is more concerning to me than on the coach's bike, your oxidation level. So your oxidation level is fairly high, which tells me that the bike possibly has overheated at some point. Do you ever have overheating problems with this bike?
Not that we notice, not on the track or off the track.
Okay, because typically with the oxidation number, it's coming from heat. That usually causes the oil to degrade faster in the oxidation. So normally if a bike does overheat, you're going to see a higher level. So something to keep in mind on this and to take a look at.
There is something that I've been reading about the R3 engine, and obviously it's not built to be a race bike and be at full RPM. So what they're saying is that the cooling system on these bikes is not pushing the fluid through over the engine fast enough, and I guess on the right side of the engine's not getting cooled. Can that be part of it?
Oh, absolutely. So if the coolant is only coming in one inlet, and by the time it gets to the other side, it's quite hot, you're going to find a localized hot spot in the engine. And that localized hot spot in the engine could be causing the issue with the oil. So it could just be making the oil degrade faster because of that. Now, something to keep in mind is that there are additives built into the oils to help protect against oxidation. So it may not be that this oil is a problem, it just may not have a robust enough additive to help protect against that in the case of an R3.
Additive.
Yep.
That's a key.
It is.
Additives. So
It's the additive.
all these oil companies have additives.
Yep,
Gotcha.
absolutely. The additives are what make the oil work better and different than other competitors.
Understood.
Okay? But that's not the only concern. there's more. The other thing on here.
Do you ever go to the doctor's office and just get those results? You're just like, okay, I got the flu, or
well, this bike
That's how I
doesn't
feel.
quite have the flu, but it's got a little bit of a cough. We'll put it that way.
All right. That's not good either.
On here is lead. Okay, so there is a questionable level of lead coming out on this. So it could be one of two things. It could be let it race fuel. So let
Which
it.
I don't use in the Moto Gladiator race.
I know, but it's something to keep in mind because I do know that you run lead through the R6.
Yeah.
So something to keep in mind if you take a look at that one, and anybody who's watching, if you do run race fuel, the lead can come through into the oil by blow-by. So you will collect a little bit more lead, and it's something just not to worry about if you're running lead at race fuel. But if you're not, then the lead content becomes a concern. Now, looking at the rest of the numbers, there's nothing really in the wear metal section or contaminants that's that high. So this leads me to look at your probably connecting rod bearings. That would be my guess. Usually when you only see lead, it's coming from there. Not to be concerned yet. Don't freak out. Don't tear down the engine. But this is something you're going to keep an eye on.
Okay.
Next oil change, look at it again. If it hasn't changed that much, then the bike may just generate some lead. Every bike generates wear metals.
Okay.
If it starts to increase, then you might have a problem.
So with that in question for the racers that are watching, so this was ran on T4, which is unleaded.
Yep.
And then now we're going to, this year we're going to simulate what we did last year to get the results back. So
yeah, and
I'll keep an eye on that.
That's a great idea. We talked a bit off camera, and what we discussed was changing the type of oil.
Yep,
So
I'm going to switch that.
Yep. Try a different one. And like I said, it's not that the oil is necessarily bad. It just may not have the right additive pack that this engine needs.
So if I had done another track day or a race in particular, it would have
This
been.
could have been bad.
Okay.
That oil was definitely dead.
So it's good to get if you're doing the track days and racing, definitely now I see the value in doing that. So thank you for that. That's a lot. I'm a little far. I lost my excitement, my mojo, but
Don't shoot the messenger.
All right.
at least we have it under control now, and it's something that we can look at. And this is why doing this, especially on track bikes, is so important. You are
racing,
beating that bike up, as you said, a lot more.
All right. So in closing, is there anything else with the R3 of Doom?
No, I don't think so. I think you're okay.
All right, well, we're gonna rubber with the diaper later. I mean, I thought literally, all you guys, we're not doing an oil conversation, but I definitely used the highest grade oil possible, and I'm a little upset with what it is, but I'm gonna try something different. I'm still gonna beat on the bike, I guess, as you're saying, and I'm gonna run it through the same intervals. I'm gonna definitely dump the oil, definitely sending it out. I'm gonna give it to Aaron. And I'm definitely going to do a small update on what I found. Okay, so in closing, we have a TSS R6 that we built. We bought it from an unknown source. The oil was looking clean coming out. Test results came back great. We also have a Evolve GT coach's bike that came back not so great, but good. He just needed to change his oil a little bit earlier. We know who you are. And the R3, sad, but I'm going to move on, try something different, and hope for some good results. Going to do the same thing, track day weekend with the one race, and I'll get that taken out, and we'll post that up as soon as I get those results. So, Aaron, thank you so much for coming by.
Thank you, Mike. Always a pleasure.
If you guys have any questions or concerns, please post up on this link, and Aaron or myself will try to help you out. Don't worry about that mean lady. Give you the best oil, I give you the best gas, and she says that the test results came back bad? No, it's okay. We'll make it. We'll make it. We'll make it. I'll get you some new oil. That's right. That's right.